There are increasing reports that Vladimir Putin is growing more paranoid about his surroundings. Last week, he reportedly fired 1,000 staff members for fear that they might have him killed. This week, he's reportedly enlisting the services of tasters to ensure that his food is safe. And there have been numerous reports, many among the elite, some of those oligarchs, in fact, have discussed ways to have him replaced with the head of the Russian FSB, which is their intelligence agency, or maybe just replaced and disappeared. For more, I want to bring in Bryan Cunningham, who served for 6 years as a senior CIA officer under President Bill Clinton. Bryan, thanks so much for being here. So anyone you talk to, when you just sort of strike up a conversation about the horrors that are happening overseas, invariably someone is going to say, somebody needs to just kill that guy. Can you break that down, how incredibly difficult that is?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me back, Ashleigh. The consensus, I think, is correct that probably no one in the last 75 years has deserved to, let's say, leave the planet expeditiously more than Vladimir Putin. Full stop. That said, this is a fantasy. It is not going to happen. Let's take the potential, as Lindsey Graham said, Brutuses inside Russia. The Russian military leadership, it's their playbook that Putin's executing. This is exactly how the Russians moved through Europe during World War II, killing and flattening everyone they saw, including civilians. This is exactly what they did in Crimea. This is exactly what they did in Syria and in Grozny. Those generals are executing their own playbook. So no pun intended, they're not going to execute the guy telling them to do it. Number one. Number two, the oligarchs. There's somehow is this conception that Putin owes his presidency to the oligarchs. It's the exact opposite. The oligarchs that were inclined to oppose Putin are gone or dead or in prison. The ones that are left owe him everything, and they're not going to challenge him. Do I wish there was some likelihood that someone would take matters into their own hands in Russia? Possibly. But even if they did, Ashleigh, I'm not sure that would change very much because, again, the generals are executing their own strategy here.
Okay, so question about that football stadium. We saw some pictures of that. There were reportedly 40,000 people in the stadium, and then this one's a bit of a joke. The Russians said 160,000 people or so outside the stadium, but of course there's no pictures to show that. But look at this on your screen. That to me says that's a very vulnerable place to be at a time when so many people are literally gunning for you. What's our intelligence like when it comes to the movements of the president of Russia?
Well, I would think that United States intelligence has a pretty good idea of where he is most of the time. And that is a very important question because there's two types of, I'm going to use the word assassination in air quotes because that's a legal term and it doesn't necessarily apply in all cases. But it could be someone from within Russia, or it could be an agent of a foreign power, the United States, Israel, others have been discussed. We would simply not take that step. It's just a bridge too far. We could talk about the legalities of it. I know you're a lawyer. This is something I've studied quite a bit, but we're just not going to do it. We are not going to carry out a hit on the head of state of Russia who has nuclear weapons. It's simply not going to happen. So yes, I hope we know where he is, but I don't think we're going to take the shot. And as for the Russian people, I have not checked, but I bet this rally was not announced too far in advance. So the ability to set up an operation to kill someone is actually much more difficult than people think. And you can't just walk into a stadium when you found out about the rally an hour before.
Right. And, America's position is that they don't assassinate heads of state. That's just always been the formal position of this country. That's not the same necessarily for other countries. But I want to flip to President Biden because he is making the trip of his presidency right now. I think for all intents and purposes, people will say this is about the most important thing he's going to do yet. But it is extraordinary that he's going to be going to Poland within about 25 to 40 miles of the latest strikes, against the military bases in Western Ukraine. What is different about protecting the president when he makes this kind of a trip than protecting the president when he makes any kind of a trip?
Yeah, it's a great question. And to me, it's not the fact that he's going to Poland that is so concerning, having been in the National Security Council under President Bush and worked on some of these visits. It's the fact that we're announcing it so far in advance. When Churchill and Roosevelt and Stalin got together during World War II, they never announced them in advance. It was announced after it happened. And so this is puzzling to me. I think he does need to go because I think he needs to show his world leadership and the solidarity of NATO and support the Polish people. I'm very surprised they're announcing it in advance. And I'd be very surprised if it happens at a time that's easily anticipated. My guess is he'll move around a little bit in Europe and not necessarily, announce. I hope he doesn't announce that he's flying from Brussels to, well, let's say Warsaw at any particular time.
Right. Well, we're going to have you back because I am pretty fascinated by the telegraphing of all these movements. I get it. We're a pretty transparent society, but sometimes that's not always a good thing. Bryan Cunningham, thank you. Yeah. Appreciate it. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.